All right,
Um,
next article. The surge of absences means
School?
virtual learning for basically in general. This
Hmm.
article is on the surge on a specific school having virtual learning because employees are leaving. But in general, there's a whole debate on do you let kids go to school? There's a lot of backlash on that. So I mean,
Dude,
what
the
is
amount
your
of teachers I've been talking to recently that have just said that this whole thing is a fucking joke. It's
yeah?
just a fucking joke. Like, could you imagine being a virtual student? Could you imagine having to go through high school again virtually?
Well,
Or
let's get a
university for
specific
that
stat out of
matter?
the way before we talk about any of this.
Yeah,
Kids are
sure.
the least likely to have COVID, or sorry, kids are the
Yeah.
least likely
Yeah,
to
get sick
suffer
from
any
COVID,
symptoms of
die from
COVID,
it.
die from COVID, whatever.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the first thing we should get out of the way. They can
Now, the
spread it,
counter
but if you
argument to that,
ice,
the counter argument to that is that they'll get it and come home and spread it to the other family. But the problem is that even if a kid gets it, they're not likely to be symptomatic. And the fucking CDC and the WHO have already come out and said that asymptomatic fucking COVID carriers
exactly,
aren't infecting anybody.
yeah,
So it really doesn't matter. Like it's not a big deal to let kids go to school. But the fucking downside of not sending children to school is massive.
yeah, it's huge.
Massive. Do you think China is keeping their kids home from education right now?
No, I saw a really cool video by the way where they were all. Anyways, I'll show you that
Go,
tomorrow, but.
go on, tell me. Yeah, yeah, what's
The
up?
video, it kind of made me realize a little bit what it was a video of you might have seen it where it's like 50 of those kids, and I've never seen it before, but they all looked like they were probably 6 or 7, right? And they had two basketballs in their hand and they're bouncing them at the same time,
Hmm.
and they bounce them, then they do a bounce, catch one from the other person
Pass it
and
to
pass the other
the
one to the
next.
cell.
Yeah,
So they do this circle. It's so interesting because they're all in sync. And I'm like, if
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
kids of the China's next
yeah. I
generation, like
know.
we're fucked. We're
Our
done.
fucking kids are eating Tide Pods and shit. Like, what the fuck,
Yeah.
man? Like, we can barely even send our kids to school in the best of times,
Yeah.
let alone have them fucking doing synchronized fucking basketball shit.
Yeah,
Like,
I wasn't doing that shit in high, like we were doing stuff in gym when I was young, but we weren't doing synchronized like stuff like that. You might have played tier 1 soccer, you might have been good at sports, but having every kid in gym class sync it up, half the kids were sitting in the corner like picking their nose and stuff, you know?
bro, I was spending so much time jerking off in high school that there was no fucking time for like fucking interesting sporting activities. It was like
Yeah.
I would do fighting and stuff like that, like in my as my sport, but outside of school and MMA, it was go home and masturbate. Like I don't know, like that.
The
I don't know what
testosterone's
they
a
do in
high.
China to like make these kids just focus on actually doing some shit. I guess if they're like 6, 7 years old, they're probably not doing that yet. But
Yeah, yes, Jeffrey
uh,
Epstein. Jeez. Freaking But seriously, yeah. Anyways, the yeah, no, I don't think China's gonna have. China probably has all their kids in, or at least even if they have virtual online learning, China probably has some really good software. From what I've heard over here,
yeah.
all the virtual learning isn't working. There's one kid in Florida that DDoSed the servers, so no one could go to school that day. Like, it's probably utter shit that we're giving the kids in. No,
Dude,
no,
here's
my
an
cousin
example.
actually started virtual school 2 weeks ago, and she couldn't get for the
Mhm.
first 3 days. She only got like one or two classes going, because all the other
Yeah.
classes either weren't working, they were down. These teachers don't know how to work this software.
Well,
They weren't trained on that.
here's the example for my brother, right? Like our school terms are different timed in the year in Australia
Right.
than yours, right? And the when COVID hit, they're in the middle of their semester, and so they took like a quick week's break and then sent the kids back to school, but it was all online. They emailed my mother, basically said, "Hey, you don't have to worry about you don't have to do anything. We've got it all handled. We're gonna make sure that Kai does his schoolwork. You just fucking sit there and don't worry about it. We've got it handled."
Right.
They're corresponding with my 13-year-old brother via email. Okay, no phone calls, no Zoom calls, no like vocal interaction with a teacher at all. They're working on a fucking honor system with a 13-year-old.
Jeez.
They're then like calling my mum 3 weeks into this shit going like, "Oh, Kai hasn't done any fucking work." And it's like, of course he hasn't done any work. He is a 13-year-old.
Yeah, he's playing COD.
Like What did you
Fortnite.
expect him to do? Like, I don't like. Why would you expect this kid to do the work on his own? And why would you tell the parents that they don't need to do anything? Like, okay,
Mhm.
if you're not going to have schools open, you need to tell the parents that they need to like do some fucking work as well. You're eliminating the teacher from the room.
Mm. Yeah, the
Like,
parents. Well, I was talking to a parent too that she said it was the worst. She hated it because her kids were probably, I think, 12 and like 8, like around those ages, and she said
yeah,
they were fighting all the time. They couldn't focus. She was basically now the teacher, right? Instead of the
yeah,
actual teachers doing the work, now the mothers and the fathers are at home trying to get their kids to do schoolwork, keeping them in check. She said it was the
yeah.
worst time. She actually had some sort of stress-related issue that she had to go to the hospital for around that time too. And I was like, do you think that's because of the? She said 100% some of that stress was directly caused by virtual learning. And it's like, of course, like you're not gonna have. Sure, some kids, the ideal kid could probably do virtual learning fine, but knowing if it was me, I'd be playing video games. That's it. Like you put me in front of a
Yeah.
computer with
But
no
that's what we were
supervision.
doing.
Yeah.
That's what we were doing. Every day I'd be playing video games with him because I'm there, like back in Australia, because I was in Thailand when COVID hit. And I'm sitting there going, like, have you done your work? He's like, yeah, done my work. Okay, cool. Let's go play fucking Super Smash Brothers. And then we're playing video games for the rest of the afternoon. And then we find out that he's been doing zero work, right? He's done literally nothing. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that you could blame him for that, right? Like you very easily could blame him for that. But in reality, what do you expect from a 13-year-old? What do you expect from a child? This is why we send them to school so they can learn how to be functioning people.
Yep.
They can
Very
learn
disciplined.
responsibilities. They can learn all of the things. Like you can't just take them out of this shit. I think that almost at this point, for the kids that have been out of school or having to do virtual, you should almost just make them all repeat the year,
Yeah,
which
pretty
is
much.
hard. And I don't like the idea that that would have to be done to anybody. But it seems like the best thing for their education, if that's what we're actually looking for. And
Everyone
I'd
should
also,
everyone should just go back in around January, and then you just start as if it was January of last year.
yeah,
Probably makes the
yeah.
most sense.
And then
Or whatever
the other part
semester
is like,
you're
if
in.
you send your kid to a fucking public school, are you gonna get a discount on your fucking taxes or something this year? Like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
Like seriously, can I get some money back for this shit? Like, what the fuck? If I paid, like, if I, like, and I think it's the same thing if you're paying for university. Like, how the fuck are they charging you the same fucking amount to not do the same job? Could you imagine going to McDonald's and being like, yeah, can I get a Big Mac? And they just bring it back and there's no meat in the fucking burger,
They
and you're
give
like,
you the
what's this?
ingredients.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, no, yeah, exactly. They like throw the ingredients at you, and they're just like, go fucking make the burger yourself, you fucking idiot. You're like, why the fuck did I just pay $6 for this
Yeah.
burger? Too fucking bad, bro. Shut the fuck up. Get out of here. Like,
Yeah.
you COVID.
At this point, there's so many arguments. It's the social aspect too. Like socially, you're gonna have people become even more. Kids are already socially deficient. They're gonna be even more socially deficient, and
Oh,
yeah, it's
bro, just plug them in even further. Like, just
and
let's just plug everyone in as hard as we can to the fucking internet.
and
Like,
also, what about the frontline workers? Like, there were so many frontline workers when this was going on, and you're telling me teachers shouldn't be frontline workers? These teachers are definitely frontline. They're teaching my kids. The kids that are
yeah,
gonna be that are
I
gonna
don't give
be
a
the
fuck
next
if you have to put
generation.
them behind a plexiglass fucking dome. Do it. Great. Whatever. Fucking put them in a cube. Put them in a bubble. I don't give a shit. They
Mm,
need to teach children. This is their job. They don't get paid very much for it. I don't give a fuck. Like, go do your job. You shouldn't have been a teacher. Like, I don't understand. Like, what the fuck are we talking about here? You have to teach children properly. You have to genuinely teach them.
pretty
Like,
much.
I feel like most of these, I think that what we're going to see basically is like any of these kids that do then go on to the next year are going to fail the next year hard. Like, you're going to see failure rates of kids in the next year way higher than ever before.
Yep.
Right? Like, you would have to imagine that kids aren't learning as well as they usually would right now.
Yep. I agree. It's not just that. Yeah, they're gonna be not used to learning. They're gonna miss stuff from this year, and they're not gonna be able to carry it over next year. It's just a mess. It's a
But
complete
their lives
mess.
don't matter. Their
No,
lives
their
don't matter.
lives don't matter.
They're
Nothing.
not 90 years old with 3 underlying health conditions and no use to our society anymore. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, I don't understand.
They'll get
Like,
it.
children, what
They'll
happened
get
to
it.
the whole, like, children of the future thing?
Yeah. Everyone's just giving up. They're like, fuck it.
Who
They're all
gives
on their
fuck
tablets and shit. And
you?
yeah,
Just fuck you, kid. Like, Jesus Christ. We give a fuck about grandpa.
it's gonna
Right?
be interesting to see how these kids turn out. Like, I think these kids are growing up in a really scary.
They're gonna
That's
put
the
their
well, that's
fucking
the other
parents in
thing.
the home.
You're teaching kids right now that this. You're teaching kids that basically you're teaching kids that everything that's happened over the past year is valid, which is not
Yeah.
true. It's not true that they should be this scared of a virus that they aren't going to school.
I know.
But you're
Like, could you
reinforcing that.
imagine? Like, don't get me wrong. If this was like a real fucking, if this was Ebola, I'd be like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, we probably shouldn't be sending these kids to school. I don't want them like vomiting and shitting themselves to death in front of everybody. Like, that sounds like a fucking nightmare, right? But that's not what's happening.
Yeah. It's
That's
not.
not what's happening. Like, what's happening is these kids get it, and that's about it.
Yeah.
That's sort
Asymptomatic.
of what happened.
They won't spread it because you got to spread it usually through it, coughing and
Droplets.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like doesn't make any sense, but that's how the world is right now. That's it. Everything, we talk about all this stuff, but really it comes down to it just doesn't make any fucking sense. Like yeah,
Yeah,
everything we
it's just
talked about right
fucking
now,
bizarro world at this point.
no sense. Clown world,
No.
like it's ridiculous.